Hello there, and welcome to the Weeb Years, a retrospective revisit into the Fuck. Hello there, and welcome to the Weeb Years, a retrospective revisit back into the Western anime boom. My name is Beanie.
My name is Laurel.
And I messed up.
Oh?
Something I meant for us to cover back in the first episode, but forgot, was why are we even doing this podcast in the first place? You know, what is the point other than just a very self-indulgent reason to be nostalgic about anime that we watched when we were in middle school?
I mean, I'm sure other people will be just as nostalgic as us. So it's content for someone. It's content for people who are 25 to 30.
25 to 35, something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But there is actually a reason why I wanted to do this. A couple reasons, actually. The main instigating factor to why I decided I wanted to do this podcast was a few years ago when I found out that you cannot legally watch the original Full Metal Alchemist anime from 2003 anywhere. It is not available for streaming. It is not in print. It is completely inaccessible. And that is just wild. The modern anime industry is so focused on what is currently coming out and what is currently airing, you know, things like Crunchyroll and Netflix and Hulu and all that, that so much wonderful classic anime is getting completely forgotten about in a way that doesn't really happen in any other industry. And for the record, this is not me saying like, oh, the stuff from our generation was better. There's so many fantastic anime coming out these days that we never could have gotten back when you and I were like 13.
Oh, for sure.
But that also doesn't mean that we should just forget about all the great stuff that came before.
I feel like we could do like a whole episode at some point unpacking this concept, because I feel like it has to be something that's influenced so much by how like the manga and the anime industry run, right? Because they're trying to push quantity over quality. And that's something that's pretty well known even in the Western world regarding anime timelines and like when they're coming out, you know?
Oh yeah, like back in the day.
Back in the day. Back in my day,
you would get like, what, 10 or 15 new anime a season? And now it's like 50 or so? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see statistics about that, because I always assumed there were a lot and we just didn't get them in the Western world.
Oh, I'd imagine so. There's a lot about the behind the scenes of anime production that we don't really get to know.
Yeah.
So the mission statement for this podcast really is kind of twofold. The first is to look back at all the big popular titles from that time period and revisit them with a modern lens. You know, do these things hold up? Do they still deserve to be as revered as they were back in the day? And see, you know, what has stood the test of time. The other is to potentially find hidden gems that were tossed to the wayside even back then, but it turns out secretly were something fantastic that we missed out on. This was not one of those things.
I was gonna say this was not one of those.
So what did we watch today, Laurel?
Oh, we watched Akikan.
Yes. It was originally a light novel series written by Riku Ranjo and drawn by Hiro Suzurihara. Neither of them really seem to have anything else major under their belts. A manga adaptation began running in Ultra Jump in 2008, and then in 2009, the first episode of the anime dropped. It was produced by Brainsbase, which you might also know from fucking Durarara, Bakano, and Spice and Wolf.
Really? Wow.
In 2012, the whole series plus the OVA was licensed for the West by Sentai Filmworks. They released a box set just with subtitles, no dub. We did not watch the OVA. Couldn't really be bothered, gotta admit.
What is it even about?
The title has something to do with a hot springs, so I assume...
Oh, yeah.
Wacky hot springs hijinks.
I see here, Akikan kan Ippatsu Onsen Panic OVA.
And also on that note, yes, Sentai Filmworks did release an official subtitled version back in 2012. We could not find that at all. We got to go back and experience the timely joy of fan subs.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Fan subs are so much less of a thing now, aren't they?
Well, with simulcasting and everything, they have kind of, I don't want to say lost their purpose, but...
Yeah, I just never thought of that. But that makes total sense, especially with the direction that streaming has gone. People aren't going to be ripping the episodes off of Japanese channels and subtitling them anymore.
Exactly, yeah. I gotta admit, going back and watching a fan sub for the first time in years was a treat. Like, the first time one of those good old editor's notes popped up on the top of the screen explaining some kind of obscure Japanese pun, it just scratched an itch in my brain.
Yeah, there was one, I specifically remember there was one in this show where they were explaining a pun that was involving counting.
Oh, the Ichi ni Sangria.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also on that note, the fan subs, the translations maybe weren't great. In some points, it's hard to tell if the terrible writing is the show's fault or the fan subs' fault. Realistically, I don't think it makes that much of a difference, though. But there were some very amusing points where you could tell the translation was, we'll say, rushed charitably. Now, before we started watching this for the podcast, had you ever heard of it at all?
I had not ever heard of it. I thought, oh, this looks fun. I didn't see the ecchi tag. So I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be cute. This is going to be like a slice of life. This is going to be moe. Not realizing that it's an ecchi comedy.
Arguably, but we'll get to that too. This was my first time actually sitting down and watching it, but I have known about it since it was airing. Because back then it was very much that case of like, oh, you gotta check out this thing. The concept is crazy. It's so wacky and zany. You know, soda cans turning into sexy anime girls to fight each other. Whether or not you actually watch it, that's gonna get your attention.
For sure. And it felt like something that very well, like if it had been a good anime, I feel like I would have watched it already. I don't know if that's too confident of a thing to say, but I love anime that kind of falls into that beautifully bizarre, super colorful mold, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I never heard of this.
So what were your first thoughts when you sat through the opening for the first time?
Do you want my literal candid note?
Oh, please.
Oh man, this looks terrible. And then the comment about it being the most anime I've ever animated.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Right from the beginning, just watching the OP, the whole show feels like a fake in-universe anime you would see in another show making fun of anime.
It totally does!
So, the show opens and introduces us to our main character, Daichi, who is the worst. He is Christ alive. He is the most insufferable piece of garbage I have ever had the displeasure of being introduced to, and I don't feel like I'm being hyperbolic either. He is a disgusting, immoral sex pest. I think at one point they basically confirm also a pedophile.
Yeah.
And I hate him. I hate him so much, and the fact that he has to be our main character is the worst.
I mean, I think that ecchi anime falls into the same kind of trap that isekai anime now falls into, where it's like, the protagonist is so bland and also just so terrible, and the worst character by far in the entire cast. However, they're the main character and you kind of follow them.
For sure, but Daichi is a whole cut above.
I don't know. I've seen some ecchi characters that are just as bad as him in other shows.
I fear to think of such a thing. But yeah, we're introduced to Daichi. On his way home from school, he stops by and sexually assaults a vending machine.
I wrote down, somehow, this boy has slut-shamed a vending machine?
I almost appreciate that scene is there because it tells you right away what kind of show you're watching, which is gross and confusing. So Daichi buys a can of melon soda from the vending machine and takes it home, and when he goes to drink it, the can magically turns into a sexy girl. And we are introduced to our second main character, very cleverly named Melon. I will say, the art and animation for this show are horrible. It came out in 2009, and it looks like it came out in 2002.
Yeah.
But I will say, I don't hate Melon's design. The dress is cute, and I like the little... We find out later that it's an aspect of all the Akikan, and not just her, but I do like her little pull tab earring. I think that's a cute little character design.
Yeah, I like the pull tab earrings, and I like that the side that it's on matters, with the one on the gay ear and the one on the straight ear, and they fight each other.
That's a concept I haven't heard of in a couple of decades.
I know, it was such a thing though at the time.
Yeah, the characters are constantly going off model. The show looks very ugly most of the time. Melon's design is cute though, and she also does get some pretty funny reaction faces in some episodes.
It's almost like the people making the show gave up as soon as we did.
So, eventually you find out that the whole deal with Melon is that she is something called, like we said, an Akikan, which is it's a soda can that turns into a magical girl. And their whole deal is that they're supposed to have a massive death battle called the Akikan Elect, which It takes until the second episode for us to even be given our main plot. You eventually find out from one of the worst characters in a sea of terrible characters, this government official from the Japanese Ministry of Economy, everything I'm saying is true, by the way, dear listener, who is this disgusting, very of-the-time, evil gay man stereotype who just tries to molest every other man that he sees. You find out from him that the Japanese government is tired of unnecessary spending and they want to standardize the production of drink cans. You know, do we use aluminum or do we use steel? Because apparently at that time period, companies were using whatever they wanted to. And their method for doing so is creating magical girls to enter a death battle to determine which one is better.
Okay, I have a list of the characters in front of me. The character you described that's like the gross gay stereotype is Hidehiko Otoya.
See, I actually did bother to remember the names of pretty much all the other characters. I just have him written down as evil gay man.
I tried, but I don't know, some of these characters are pretty forgettable.
And actually, you know what? Just now, as I'm thinking about it, I don't think they ever actually explain clearly, did the government make the Akikans? Or was it just a thing that started happening and they took advantage of it? Because it's actually kind of unclear. They kind of make it sound like Akikans just started existing out of nowhere and the government is just kind of overseeing them.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever clarified why or when they were made, but Melon is, I think, one of the first ones to appear. Well, I guess not, because later we see a bunch of empty cans, so who knows?
Yeah, it's very confusing.
They really just world built the boring stuff and left out the interesting stuff.
Which, also, yeah, to clarify, Akikan is apparently a play on words that means empty can. In fact, I think when Sentai Filmworks did their localization, I think they just called the series Empty Can. I may be wrong about that, though.
Interesting. I was wondering what that was. I was wondering if it was maybe like a reference to Akiba or something.
Oh, like Akihabara?
Yeah, like Akiba District, which I think is
Yeah.
Akihabara.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, first episode, we get Daichi, we get Melon. I will take a moment to say, while Daichi is horrible, his seiyuu, Jun Fukuyama, does an amazing job. He is such a treat to listen to. He has an incredible range. I looked him up. He has done a bajillion different things, but is especially known for being Lelouch Lamperouge from Code Geass.
Yeah, I was looking through this, and I think the thing that I recognized him from was Auto Exorcist, because he's the brother in that.
Oh yeah, Blue Exorcist. I forgot about that show. Holy shit.
That was like one of the first shonen I really enjoyed.
So later as the show goes on, we're introduced to some of Daichi's classmates. In particular, we get introduced to Najimi, who for a while was honestly my favorite character. Maybe it's just because the rest of the show is so terrible and I'm fishing for anything to like, but her running joke about being this like externally very shy and meek little childhood friend stereotype, but in her head she is just the horniest, thirstiest bitch. I did find that kind of funny, I will admit.
I've seen other shows do it better, for sure, but I think that Najimi is one of the stronger characters, if not the strongest character in this series as a whole. She's got a lot of stuff fleshed out, too, that a lot of other characters don't really get.
We'll get to it a bit more later, but her and another character I kind of wish were just the main characters, and not Daichi and Melon, because Daichi and Melon really aren't interesting at all.
For real!
Actually, pretty much the only point in the show where Daichi does get to be interesting is in the second episode, where you learn his wild fucking shooter backstory.
Oh, yeah! yeah, that comes up like twice and then they forget about it.
The second episode opens with this like super gritty. Initially, I thought it was like a dream sequence, but it turns out to be a flashback. But it opens with this like weirdly dark and gritty flashback to when Daichi and Najimi were in middle school. And you find out later in the episode what happened was that a bunch of people tried to kidnap Najimi because her parents are like super fucking rich. And Daichi saved her by wrestling one of the kidnappers' guns out of his hands and shooting the kidnappers. And they play it up very dramatically. It's super out of place.
So after the dream sequence, I wrote, psych, you're not watching a show that cool. And then I scrolled down to the notes at the bottom. Holy fuck, he has PTSD from shooting grown-ass men.
Oh my god, okay. So, I hate that they did this, because here's the thing. You find out that after Daichi shot and killed... I'm pretty sure he killed them. But after Daichi shot those kidnappers...
They say in the episode
he didn't. Okay.
That they survived the shots.
Okay, well, he did shoot them, though.
Yes.
And you find out that after he shot those kidnappers and saved his friend, because he committed this, like, big act of violence, like, everyone in the neighborhood and his old middle school, like, they were really scared of him. He was ostracized from his peer groups and all that. Eventually, he had to change schools and change, like, districts when he moved to high school and everything. And yeah, he's got, like, some real-ass trauma about the whole situation, but...
He reportedly has some real-ass trauma. Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah, but it's so blatantly there to do that really shitty writing thing that bad shows will do, where you have a character who's just, like, basically an irredeemable piece of shit, but, oh, they did this one good thing at one point in their lives, so secretly they're a good person, and it makes it okay. It doesn't make it okay. I don't care what he did. He still sucks. He's still gross.
So, the way I took it wasn't that it was redeeming him. It was that it was giving a reason for Najimi to be friends with him. Because she's, like, popular a little bit at school, and he's, like, an outcast, and it would make no sense for her to be spending so much time with him if they didn't have this backstory, considering how horrible and reprehensible he is.
It's definitely a twofold thing, because it does explain why... I mean, I'm pretty sure they were friends before that, but it does explain maybe why this absolute little sweetheart for some reason is in love with this disgusting sex pest.
Yeah. So, one of the side characters in this show is literally named Gigolo.
Yes!
Which is a bold choice.
Yes. There's the other two, along with Najimi, there's two other classmates that are recurring characters. There's Gigolo, where his name is a pun on the fact that his real name is Amaji Goro, but when you say it fast, it sounds like I'm a gigolo. So Daichi nicknamed him Gigolo. It doesn't always land, but the writer of this show very clearly has a love for puns and wordplay that shines through regardless.
Why couldn't we have a show that was less horny and just more about that, though?
Oh, what could have been is gonna be a recurring theme.
I have a lot of notes about loving Kochikaze Yurika. I very quickly realized that she was just who I was in high school.
That's kind of scary to think about because I really did not like her when she first showed up.
I mean, I don't think I actually legitimately acted like that, but like... I definitely had a couple friends I was like that with, you know?
She's not nearly as terrible as Otoya is, but, like, we were just introduced to the predatory gay man, and then very shortly afterwards, it's like, oh, and here's the predatory lesbian. I wasn't really a fan. Even when she eventually kind of, like, mellowed out, her introduction did not endear her to me, we'll say.
She is very predatory lesbian, but she really isn't as bad as a lot of the predatory lesbians I've seen in anime, I feel. Like, she's not great, but she's not the worst, and she's definitely better than the other characters in the show itself.
There's definitely worse ones in anime for sure, but she's kind of just emblematic of the show's general thoughts on queer people.
Yeah, but I did actually like a lot of scenes with her in them because I thought they were funny and relatable, whereas the gay man just feels like textbook antiquated homophobia. Like the predatory...
Oh, he's definitely worse.
The predatory lesbian isn't great, but it's leagues better than the bad gay, I think. But predatory predatory lesbianism is also something that is a huge issue in terms of tropism. So take with that.
It was mainly just, oh, here's that too. So that's what you think would be the setup for the show. You know, here's this boy, he has his magical girl, melon lady, and they're gonna have some cool battles with other anthropomorphized soda flavors, and it's gonna be a neat battle anime. You fool. You gullible child. That's not what this is at all. It's slice of life and bad. In the whole 12-episode series, there's maybe 4 fights, and there's maybe one of them that is decent to watch.
You know what I kept thinking is it really, like, the way that the Akikans work really feels like it's trying to go for, like, a Fate Stay Night kind of thing, but just not committing. It feels a lot like it's trying to be Fate Stay Night and failing miserably at different points to me because of the way that they have, like, an owner, and their owner gives them commands and things like that.
You know, I can see where you're coming from with that, yeah.
And the first Fate Stay Night anime came out in 2006, so this would be coming out a couple years on the heels of that.
Oh, you think that it's an active ripoff?
I don't think it's an active ripoff, but I think that I think there's something there. There's some correlation.
It's a fair comparison to be made.
And also, it's like there's a lot of weird parallels too, because in the Fate series, there's a lot of teenagers living by themselves for no reason, and thematically, there's a lot of weird parallels.
I would chalk that one up just being an anime thing.
To an extent, but you never see any parents in this show, and it's bizarre to me.
I cannot imagine what the parents would think of the situation that they're in.
And also, Najimi talks about living on her own, but not talking about why she isn't living with her rich family.
Well, that one I'm pretty sure they do say something about, like, her parents want her to be more independent. That's also why they're not financially supporting her.
That's kind of fucked up.
A little bit, yeah.
What is that to a 16-year-old?
There's a lot about this that's fucked up.
17-year-olds? 18-year-old? I don't know what their ages are.
Daichi is 16, I know they say the first episode, so I assume
she's probably 16.
Hey, that makes more of this worth.
Yeah.
Speaking of horrible things, it doesn't take too long until we're introduced to our next Akikan, Budoko, who is a grape soda lolly. I will say, mercifully, she is spared the majority of this show's gross bullshit. But even just on a conceptual level, when you remember that the way these magical girl sodas transform from soda can to girl is they get drank and then they manifest kissing the person who drank the can, it's not fun to think about that they have a, 6-year-old in this whole situation.
Yeah, what the fuck? I never thought of that.
It's really gross, and they do try and mitigate it by having her owner, Mitsuki, I believe is the name?
Misaki, yes. Misaki Miyashita.
They do try and make it a little more acceptable by having her owner be significantly younger than the rest of the cast also. I will say, when we were first introduced to her, I thought she was an adult, and just, a very short adult. Turns out, I think that, if Budoko is, 6, I think Misaki is, 10 or 11. Still, they do, in the last episode, they do actually show the two of them do the whole, kiss to materialize thing, and I wish they hadn't. I wish Budoko wasn't in here. She starts out being a very annoying little child. She eventually gets fine. There's actually one episode near the end where she gets to have a cute little moment where she plays princess. I liked that, but I wish she wasn't involved. Get the grape lolly out of here, please.
I'm sorry, we're trying to figure out... Misaki is listed as a junior high sophomore student, which I think would mean she's in middle school. I don't know what the fuck a sophomore is, though. What year is that?
I don't.
Is a sophomore your first, second, third, or fourth year of high school in America?
In America, we have 4 years of high school. It's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Okay, so it probably means she's in her middle year. Second year of junior high.
I feel like she's got to be 13 or 14.
I think she's 10. 9 or 10. I think she's younger than that.
That seems way too young for middle school.
I might have to write this out and do a chart about it.
Let's move on, I think.
Yeah, this isn't important. Episode 3 is also where we learn that the childhood best friend is a fucking freak / affectionate, because he goes to her house and she is a literal hoarder.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Isn't that
Well,
fascinating?
I don't know about hoarder. She's just kind of messy.
No, but the way that she talks about things is very much a hoarder mentality, where she's saying that she can't get rid of things because she needs to use them for other purposes. That's often, like, the psychological side of what hoarding is. Not being able to throw things away because you might need them later, or not wanting to waste things.
See, I took that as just like she's being very frugal because, again, her parents don't support her financially, despite the fact that she's, like, they're fucking loaded. So she's just trying to make sure she saves money by not wasting things.
She's keeping, like, empty bags. She's keeping
does
empty
definitely
cans.
go overboard, yeah.
I have, like, a whole writing about how you could have a really interesting reading on the childhood best friend from a mental health perspective, because there is so much going on with her throughout that is not going on with anyone else. And it is fascinating.
She is so much more interesting than most of the other characters. So a few episodes pass, and during a party at Najumi's house, Najumi leaves to go get some drinks from a vending machine, and she ends up getting her own Akikan named Yell. Yell is my favorite character. I love Yell so much. I want to rescue her from this garbage show and give her the life that she deserves. She's this cool, like, ninja servant girl. She's got a cool, like, arm blade weapon. She's responsible for one of, like, the only good-looking fights.
She's the saber of this show.
When she fights Melon. I'm pretty sure that's a Fate reference, right?
Yeah. She's the Artoria, the blonde bitch.
Oh, right.
She's very similar, I think, personality-wise, except also there's, like, the weird cat stuff going on with Yell later on.
I love Yell because she's just... I love Yell's weird cat thing. Like, she's usually just this, like, very composed, cool ninja lady, but then every now and then she just gets a little cat face and she starts playing around with the cats, and it's so cute. I love Yell so much.
It is very cute. It is very cute. I just don't understand what the hell that has to do with Gatorade.
Got that tiger in your tank. And I love Yell's relationship with Najumi, too. Like, it's so sweet.
One of the things I love about Yell is that they're really pulling from the Sailor Moon inspiration for her. She's very Bishoujo.
Yeah.
And I kept calling her the Bishoujo, and then when she gets introduced in class, all the students are literally yelling, "Oh, Bishoujo!" And I was like, oh, they know what they're doing.
She also is the only one who gets like a almost magical girl transformation sequence whenever she transforms from can mode to person mode.
It's literally the silhouette with the space texture over it from Sailor Moon. It's very Sailor Moon.
It's also one of the few, like, arguably decent pieces of animation in the whole show.
Yes.
Is that little piece there. But yeah, so Najumi has her own Akikan now. That is not revealed to Daichi and Melon for another few episodes, though. They kind of play around with the fact that they know that Yell exists and they fought Yell a couple times, but oh, who's her owner? We gotta find her owner and then we can have a fight. And eventually there's a fight between Yell and Melon, which ends with Melon getting kind of hurt. And that's when Daichi is like, oh, I don't want us to do the Akikan elect thing. I don't want you getting hurt. I don't like violence. And there's this halfway decent character writing snuck in there where you can argue that the reason why Daichi is so against fighting and violence is because of what happened in middle school and how his life was basically ruined when he had to use violence, even though it was for a good reason. I don't know how intentional that is, but that is a read that you could give it.
I think episodes 4 through 6 were like the objectively best episodes of this show.
Absolutely. Because 5 and 6 especially is when you get to have Yell attacking Daichi.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting that I thought would pan out in an interesting way and just kind of fell a little bit flat is that Najumi knows that Melon is an Akikan and belongs to Kakeru before he even knows that she has an Akikan, because she sees the earring and she recognizes it.
Yeah, once she gets Yell, she has context for the little pull tab earring thing.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really interesting kind of thing, how she was really in a situation where Yell could have absolutely taken out Melon if this were that type of show.
I was predicting a scenario where where Najimi would get jealous of Melon for taking all of Daichi's time, and she would have Yell go and try and take Melon out, which I wasn't super far off on.
No.
Because what ends up happening is Najimi gets Daichi to agree to take her out on a date because she does a favor for him. He cancels on her last minute so that he and Melon can try and find the mysterious owner of Yell, who they still don't know that it's Najimi yet. But then later on, Najimi sees them together, thinks that he canceled on her to go on a date with Melon instead, gets really upset, and tells Yell, hey, go punish Daichi for me. And Yell takes that as, oh, cool, I'm gonna go kill this bitch.
Yeah! That's like the most interesting part of this whole show.
It was really pretty decent, yeah, because then also, like, you get one of the most violent scenes of the whole show where Yell uses her fucking energy arm blade to cut this huge bloody gash into Daichi's chest. Melon comes in, sees this happening. Najimi comes and's like, oh god, Yell, what are you doing? And that's when the reveal is to Daichi and Melon, like, wait, you own this Akikan? You told her to do this? And it's some actually interesting drama, which sort of lasts. It gets resolved pretty quickly, but it was kind of nice while it was there.
It's a wild way to end an episode, especially for this show, that they were like, okay, Daichi's getting stabbed, end credits.
It does get resolved pretty quickly, but it was fun while it lasted.
It was a bold choice.
And then eventually it just reverts to a bunch of pretty boring slice of life stuff, but now Yell is also in the equation. But at least it's better because Yell is there, because Yell is great.
I love that Yell just wants to kill a man.
Yell is so ready to fuck a bitch up, and I love it. They do some stuff later on with Najimi and Yell where I don't think it is explicit enough. It's not as explicit as I would like it could be, but you could argue by the end, Najimi has kind of given up on Daichi and is instead together with Yell, which, ideal scenario, it's a much more interesting relationship than Najimi and Daichi. And Yell deserves it. She's wonderful.
I thought for the first few episodes that Yell was like an adult and that Najimi was like a teenager. So I thought that was weird, but I think that they're supposed to be, I don't know, teenagers, because they're going to school, right? And I don't think they would have enrolled her into school if she was supposed to be a grown-ass woman.
I think that's just the side effect of the very, like you said, bishoujo design in an otherwise kind of cutesier art style.
That was a little confusing.
This is a decent enough point to put this in, but one thing I did kind of want to touch on is if you think about it for longer than like 2 seconds, the existence of the Akikan is kind of an existential fucking nightmare. These beings exist purely to serve, and once they've outlived that usefulness, they kind of just accept that they might as well not even exist. It's very Toy Story.
I mean, but also, I don't think they could die permanently unless the can's destroyed.
No, but to the Akikans, they have this mentality that, like, I must serve my owner, otherwise I might as well not exist.
Yeah.
And then there's that other thought process of just, like, what does it mean to be a creature that exists only to be in the service of others and not have a real will of your own? It's like...
But I mean, are we sure they're sentient and not just sapient?
I think you're definitely supposed to feel that they are.
I think you're supposed to, but I think it could be read either way if you're looking at it literally.
I think at a certain point we're putting too much thought into this stupid anime. But I did want to at least point it out, like, that's a little unpleasant.
It is bleak, but however, one of the things that's established in the show is that the Akikan can be revived by having some juice of theirs put back in the can. So I think it's also kind of implying that they are immortal in a sense.
Arguably, yeah.
Which I guess makes that a little bit scarier, because once you've served your purpose and you can die, but you can't die.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Again, very Toy Story.
Yeah. I mean, in Toy Story, they can, like, go to different kids, though, right?
They can try.
Yeah. If you were an Akikan, what would you be?
Baja Blast. That seems kind of obvious. I don't know why you asked.
Well, I have to ask for the audience. They don't necessarily know about the Baja Blast video yet.
I think you would be kombucha.
Really?
Well, I'm trying to think of, like, because of the weed, I'm trying to think of, like, what's a very earthy drink.
So here we have, like, edibles that are drinks that you can go and buy at the store.
Oh, we do too.
Okay, I know that they aren't a thing in some places. Like, some places you have to go to, like, proper dispensaries, and there's some that are just knockoff versions of regular pops. So I think maybe I would be one of those. Like, I wouldn't be Mr. Spice, but Mr. Spice is an example of one. That's like the Dr. Pepper one.
Now, eventually, after another few episodes of pretty boring and gross and unfunny slice of life stuff, last 2 episodes, a plot happens, and we're introduced to an actual antagonist.
Zero is what they call her at first.
Well, they call her little creations Zero. At first, they just call her the nameless Akikan.
Oh, I thought that they were referring to her as Zero, and then the other ones were different forms of her.
No.
Okay.
We get introduced to this evil Akikan who has the ability to, like, steal the souls of other Akikans and absorb them into her body, making her more powerful by mixing their juice with hers, which, I say it out loud, boy, that's horny. And also, she can summon these, like, clone evil copies of them, which she calls, like, her Zero versions, like Melon Zero and Budoko Zero, which I don't know if it's intentionally a pun on, like, Zero Sugar Soda, but that's kind of funny.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That is funny.
But yeah, she gets introduced. She goes on a fucking rampage. She's tearing through. She attacks the government people. She attacks the evil gay man and his assistant lady. She absorbs
not the
Budoko.
evil gay man.
Horrible. You find out later that he's alive, and I was very sad about that.
Yeah.
I would have liked if he had stayed dead.
That's one of the gays that we should bury.
Bury that gay specifically.
Bury that one.
But no, she kidnaps and steals Budoko's soul. She eventually gets Yell and even Melon too. And it's supposed to be a very dramatic and harrowing scene. It's not. I could not have given a shit about what was happening. It's so boring. And eventually they're saved by the power of love. It's the power of love that lets them escape her body and go back to their cans. And one of the many complaints I had about this show going through it was that for a show that was at least promising you a battle anime, like in the first 12 episodes, you only get 3 Akikan, 4 once you finally get the evil one. So the whole time I was like, come on, show us more like interesting character designs. The character designs of the Akikans are some of the only like halfway interesting things in the show that I look forward to. And in the final battle against the evil Akikan, the nameless Akikan, she summons a huge army of all of the ones that she's absorbed. And there are some really interesting designs hidden in there. There's like a cool like pink clown girl. There's this like cyber ninja looking bitch. Like there's some fun stuff to be had in that background scene. I just wish they had occurred earlier in the show.
You know what's interesting too is at the end of episode 6, I was like, this feels like the last episode of the show.
It did, yeah. It was really weird. It was very strange, because like they do that thing where the ending plays, but as like background music, and they're treating it like very much like a wrap-up.
Yeah.
But you still got the other half of the show to go.
That was when my wife came in, and she was like, oh, are you on the last episode? And I was like, no, I'm halfway through the show. And she was like, what? Because it looks confusing. Like, and there's like credits, and like the episode ends with them talking about like the power of friendship.
I don't understand what the point of that was.
And then you know what else is weird? In the next episode, there's a new opening, but only the song. The actual animation is exactly the same. They just slapped a new song on it.
Yeah, there were some weird fucking choices made. There were some weird fucking choices made partway through this show.
I've never seen that in another show. Usually they at least, like, use different clips from the show, you know?
Yeah, if anything, usually what happens is the animation changes, but the song stays the same. They just update the animation for, like, character changes or whatever.
Exactly. There's also, like, a lot of different versions of the endings, which I thought was bizarre for a show that's like this.
It's the same song every time, but it's a different, like, cover or a remix for each episode, which, I don't know, that's kind of neat. It's sort of wasted on this, but it's neat.
I've seen some other shows do it too, but it felt really weird in this show, especially because the song, like the first ending is like in the first episode, it's dog shit. It's one of the worst anime songs I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, it's pretty bad, because I'm pretty sure it's sung by Budoko, who does the very like exaggerated little baby voice.
Yeah, and like the singing really suffers as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, eventually, power of love, they rescue their Akikans from the Nameless One.
Yes.
They have a big fight against her army of zeros, which isn't super interesting, and eventually they combine their powers, they defeat her, and you find out the reason why she was evil. It's... I'll admit, this was actually funny. The reason why she's evil is because she was abandoned by her owner, and she wanted to give suffering to all of those Akikan who still have owners that love them. Turns out, her owner, quote-unquote, was a fucking cat.
And it's a cat that you've, like, seen throughout the show that, like, likes to lay on the main guy's roof.
Yeah, the cat would just be interspersed throughout the whole show as just a weird, like, scene transition thing. But then in the last episode, you find out that it had knocked a drink can out of this little boy's hand and licked it, and that summons the Nameless One, and she's like, "Oh, my master, I'm here to serve you." The cat gets freaked the fuck out and runs away, and so the Nameless Akikan is just like, "I have been abandoned and I will never know love, and so no one else should know love." And that was actually pretty fucking funny.
I would have liked it more if it wasn't delivered by the bad guy who wasn't dead.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he had stayed dead.
Also, wait, does that mean she had to kiss the cat?
They don't show her do it. Yeah, they don't even show that happen. It's just the cat, like, knocks the drink out of this little kid's hand before he can drink it, and it spills on the ground, and the cat just licking it up off the ground summons the Akikan. Way to stick to your rules, boys.
How come we have to see people kissing children, but we don't have to see people kissing cats? Can we just maybe make a different way that this works?
I think you know why.
I will say one thing that I really liked about the final Akikan, her name ends up being Miku. One thing I love about her is that at one point she opens her trench coat and she's got like a trench coat full of cans. That's a really fun
all
visual.
the corpses of her victims. Also, yeah, they eventually name her Miku as a joke on her being a mixed juice drink. So mixed Miku, whatever. And then the final ending of the show is sung by Hatsune Miku.
Okay, I wasn't imagining that. That was Miku.
No, that was Hatsune fucking Miku. I got a Miku jump scare.
You know what's funny is I think Watamote also did the same thing with the endings, and they also had one that was sung by a Vocaloid, but I think that was Oliver and not Miku. It's been so long.
Oh, interesting. It is really impressive just how bad this show is. Like, it fails at being a comedy, it fails at being a battle series, and it even fails at being like a sexy ecchi series. Because here's the thing, like, ostensibly it's supposed to be an ecchi series. The female characters don't get sexualized very much, at least not by the framing. Like, I think there was one panty shot in the whole show.
No, there's a few in episode, I think 8. Or wait, no, 8 is I think the one, that's the beach episode. So that's not one with a panty shot. The panty shots I think are in episode 9, which is the one where it's showing them all getting jobs, which is also a weird, there's kind of a weird few episodes after it feels like everything wraps up in episode 6 where they were like, yeah, we don't know what to do with this show, so we're just gonna do a bunch of weird slice of life tropes. Because there's the baseball episode, there's the discount beach episode where they just go to a shitty water park instead of a real beach. Like, it's just, they really just had to pad space between episode 6 and episode 11.
It's just bad. It's just bad.
And there's so much stuff they could have talked about instead that they didn't. Like the fucking backstory, where he shot a guy. Like, why didn't we just have a whole episode about that?
It could have been, it could have been so much better. There's so much wasted potential for this fucking show. But no, like, for an ecchi anime, it's really not that gratuitous visually. It's mainly just full of super duper gross sex jokes and a lot of queer-phobic stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, something about the fact that the girls aren't really sexualized almost makes it worse. Like, at least if there was a bunch of gross panty shots and bouncy titties and shower scenes and all that, I could kind of just shrug disappointedly and be like, oh, anime. But because they're treated so neutrally, but are constantly being harassed by Daichi's horrible, pervy, quote-unquote jokes, it feels so much grosser for them.
I don't know. I feel like in the kind of filler feeling episodes that there's a lot packed into those. Because there's a scene where the lesbian is pitching in baseball and she's not wearing a bra, and her boobs are just animated for like a minute and a half, and it's bizarre.
That one was in service of a gag, though, because that was joking on how Yell gets into, like, kitty cat mode if she sees moving objects. And so he's like, ooh, I'm gonna distract you with my bouncy titties and you won't be able to hit the ball. That was kind of funny.
There's just so many other ways they could have done it, though. They could have had her go and try to, like, catch the ball in her mouth, or, like, try to bat it with her paw like it's, like, a cat toy or something, you know? Like, they didn't have to go for the titties.
Oh, Yell, you're so much better than the show deserves.
There is also another side character we kind of miss, but I also don't want to spend too much time on. I think her name was Bunny. Their name was Bunny. And they just feel like...
we're not going to touch Bunny.
Yeah.
We covered Bunny when I said that it was queerphobic.
They're queerphobic? I don't even know what they're trying to portray, but it's queerphobic.
Cross-dressing trans people.
But, like, my point is, like, I don't know if this is supposed to be, like, a drag queen, if this is supposed to be a trans person. This is not, like...
The thing is, at that time period, public perception, there wasn't really a difference.
To an extent. I mean, because, like, I'm thinking about, like, Tokyo Godfathers, which came out in 2003 and does so much better at representing a character who is pretty clearly supposed to be trans in that one.
Yeah. You know what is just a fantastic representation of how bad this show is and how little people care about it beyond just the meme?
Like the meme of it being, like, crazy, oh, they're can girls fighting.
I checked. There is only 5 pieces of artwork of this show on Rule 34.
Oh my god!
That's insane. I've read webcomics that have more representation on Rule 34 than that. Now, at this point, I think we've said pretty much all that we can say about this show, but let's see what people had to say about it when it was coming out. I have compiled a few reviews that I found. I found a couple from my anime list and one from a more major review site. I do want to point out just at the beginning, the show currently has a 6.11 out of 10 on my anime list, which is way too high. The first review I have is from a My Anime List user, Mr. Manila, from 2009. This is just excerpts, of course. The ending was terrible. Really, it was like a terrible season finale to some crap Power Rangers spin-off, except with an even worse soundtrack. Plus, I think they tried to send me off with a lesson. Anyways, I give this anime a 6 out of 10.
It does get weirdly Sentai in that last episode or two, and I didn't really understand what that was about.
I assumed someone on the creative staff was just very into Sentai stuff. The next review I have is a much more substantial one. This is going to be a couple paragraphs that I'm going to read. But this is from Them Anime Reviews. Reviewer is Stieg Hogset. I think I'm pronouncing that right. When it comes to anime that centers around some hapless male suddenly and very unexpectedly finding himself with female company after a lengthy time of being single, you generally don't set your expectations high. The run-of-the-mill ratio tends to overwhelm whichever titles out there actually hold some merit. So I guess it's no real secret that shows like these are generally about male wish fulfillment. Nevertheless, while I might have the habit of heaping large helpings of scorn upon shows like these, it's not like I don't understand or have forgotten how it is to be young. But about halfway into Akikan, I came to the conclusion that I've had enough of this. Yeah, this guy stopped reviewing it halfway through, I want to point out. And the kicker? It's not the ludicrous concept that turned me off the show, nor is it the repeated attempts and failures at being funny. It's not even the creepy gay scheming molester who's the mastermind behind the whole Akikan Select thing, or even any of the other characters, neither of which I really hated. No, the reason why I really can't stand to watch this show is far worse than any of those. It's because the creators are throwing all of this in our faces to try and distract us from figuring out that they couldn't write a coherent scene to save their lives, much less an entire show.
Literally.
There are no words in Elvish, Entish, or the tongues of men that can properly convey the sheer magnitude of stupidity and ineptitude found in Akikan.
Sorry, did this guy just stop watching the show and start watching Lord of the Rings instead?
Lord of the Rings references were still very big back then.
Yeah. I really like the mental image that this guy was like, this show sucks, I need to cleanse my palate. Starts watching the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. I can't blame him. I wanted to give up after episode 9, I think.
I wanted to give up after episode 4. You lasted longer than I did.
I mean, I've watched some pretty bad ecchi shows in the past. I don't think this was the worst still, but it was pretty bad.
You know, I actually meant to say this at the top of the episode and forgot, but legitimately and without hyperbole, I forgot that anime could be this bad. I really did.
No.
Anyway, the last review that I found that I wanted to read a part of just for shits and giggles. This is another My Anime List user review. This one's from 2013. Tsundere, perverted lead, childhood friend. Most of the characters are pretty much cliché, but what I found unique about this anime is how open it is to homosexual characteristics.
No!
Especially that Otoya guy, who is a molester. Fucking what?
Okay, it must be sarcasm, right?
It's not.
How can you say that not sarcastically?
Fucking Kaiser Los 24, I'm putting you on blast, buddy.
That has to be sarcasm. Nobody can genuinely believe that, right? Right?
2013 was a different time.
I was out then and I don't remember it being this bad. I just can't wrap my head around it. I can't wrap my head around genuinely believing that that is not the worst representation of a gay person I've ever seen.
Again, I think it's worth pointing out that this has a shockingly high rating. Like 6 out of 10? That feels super generous for
really
this
does.
thing.
A lot of the stuff I was seeing of people talking about the show was from like 2010 though, so I wonder if it's just aged like milk.
I don't know. When I was looking at reviews, I did find a couple from like last year of people watching it for the first time, and they were listing it under like recommended. They had a good time with it. I feel like what it might be is that some people are just having a higher bullshit threshold than us and are more willing to sit through the more upsetting aspects of it and just treat it as like a bad movie night kind of watch.
I don't know. I have a pretty high bullshit threshold, I like to think.
Oh, same.
But it's not even just that. It's that the writing is just so bad throughout. Like, there's no redeeming qualities. Why are you giving this a 6 out of 10? Like, the most redeeming quality is the character designs, and I don't think that makes up for all the bad bullshit.
I'm going to put a call out to our listeners, and I mean this sincerely. If you are someone who watched Akikan either back when it came out or more recently, and you did enjoy watching it, whether it was you actually thought it was a good show, or you were just able to look past all of its problems and have a fun time with a bad show, please get a hold of us somehow, either on social media or through email, and just like let us know and tell us your thoughts on it, because I am very curious in a very non-judgmental way. We are not going to call you out for enjoying this show that we think is bad. I'm just very curious to hear from someone who actually enjoyed their time with it.
I think perhaps if you're a person who hasn't seen a lot of anime already, a lot of stuff in this show may feel novel still. I think that could maybe be a part of it, and also that when it came out in 2009, a lot of these tropes were less played out than they are now. But that's my best guess, because it really doesn't do a lot of stuff that's novel or unique.
I think a lot of it really does just boil down to the basic concept of, ooh, magical soda girls. Isn't that wacky?
There's so many things that are equally wild or more wild, you know?
I think closing thoughts, we can agree that there's a lot of wasted potential in this show.
Yes.
It is infuriating how easily I could have made a better show from this premise, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not usually the kind of person to be like, oh, I could do it better, but in this instance, I think I could do better.
I could blow this out of the water.
More likable characters, more focus on the combat, more like introducing other Akikan and getting creative with their abilities and stuff like that. More focus on the whole Akikan elect thing. Don't make Daichi exist.
So, when I was watching this, I kept thinking, wow, I'd rather be watching Keijo because it's self-aware and it does a lot of the same stuff and the characters are adults. And it's funny.
Keijo is the butt battles anime, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt very similar tonally to a lot of things, but also there's no male protagonist in Keijo, it's just the girls. There is like the 2-part finale with an enemy who's been appearing out of nowhere. There's dumb boob jokes, dumb butt jokes that don't make you feel bad because there's no fucking children.
That is appreciated.
If you want to watch this, just go watch Keijo.
Honestly, Keijo kind of feels like the Akikan of its time, because I think that was one that a lot of people didn't actually watch, but they knew of it because of the "it's so wacky" meme of the whole thing.
And if you want something with, like, the girls who are not human, there's the Fate series. That's got issues, but at least it's interesting.
We'll touch on Fate eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that about does it for Akikan. Normally, this is the part of the episode where we'd have our whole little "would you recommend this to someone today" diatribe, but I think we've made it pretty clear at this point that no, we fucking would not.
Well, I would recommend alternatives that I think would satisfy some of the same things that you would go to this show for.
Oh, yeah.
But
like you said with Keijo.
Yeah, like I think Keijo is a much better watch than this. It's much less uncomfortable. They are human beings. However, you get more fan service, more fights, more interesting abilities. Like you get more of everything that this show promised and never delivered on.
I can't even recommend this for like a bad movie night watch party with your friends, because I tried to do that. As I tried watching through this for the podcast, I drug a friend into it and we watched it together, and it didn't make it any better, really. It was just we were suffering as a pair.
I feel like showing this to someone else would be a hate crime.
I need to go to jail, is what you're saying.
You need to go to jail. I'm just saying I would feel terrible. I felt my wife was so upset about watching this that she left the room.
As she should be.
And I felt bad about that, so I can't imagine sitting down someone else beside me to watch this after I've seen it already.
We're just bad people, I think.
No, I think this is just a bad show.
We can recognize that this is a horrible fate to place upon anybody.
Yes. When there's so many things that are more accessible. Like, the other thing, too, is usually you want to watch shows because you can talk about them with people. Nobody's gonna be fucking talking about this. There's no reason to watch this. It's not available anywhere legally easily, so it's hard to find. It's poorly constructed. It's very hateful, and it's very boring.
I am thirsty now, though. Not like that. But yeah, for better or worse, mostly for worse, that was Akikan. If you would like more of this show, we are at Weeb Years on Blue Sky and Twitter. If you'd like to send in listener questions, suggestions, whatever, what have you, we are theweebyears@gmail.com. And yeah, we hope you had a good time with us today.
I need to go cleanse my palate by watching Lord of the Rings.
Oh, my wife still hasn't seen that, actually. Maybe I'll get her to watch that finally. Anyway, have a good one, everybody.
Bye!